So today, we're jumping into one of the most intense, emotionally packed chapters in the entire story of Jesus, Mark chapter 14. Seriously, this is where everything speeds up. It's just this dense, dramatic chain of events that all happens in just a few hours, and it leads right to the cross. And yeah, let's just be real about it from the start. As one Bible teacher I saw put it, this is going to be a heavy chapter. We're about to see some serious betrayal, real agony, and crushing denial. But, it's in these moments of insane pressure that the most profound truths really come to light. So let's get into it. You know, to really get what's happening in Mark 14, it helps to see it as a story of two totally opposite reactions to Jesus. On one side, you have this absolutely beautiful, radical devotion. And on the other, a cold, calculated betrayal. These two things, sitting right next to each other, they really set the stage for everything else. Okay, so here's our plan for walking through this. We'll start by setting the scene. Then we'll look at this incredible act of devotion. We'll contrast that with the night of betrayal. Feel the agony in the garden. Witness a disciple's painful denial. And then, and this is so important, we'll see why failure is never the final word. All right, so picture this. It's just 2 days before Passover, which is the biggest, most important festival of the year. The city of Jerusalem is absolutely jam-packed with people, and you can just feel the energy in the air. But behind the scenes, there's this secret plot brewing. The religious leaders are scheming, trying to find a sneaky way to arrest Jesus and have him killed. The tension is just thick. So right in the middle of all this danger, Jesus is in a nearby town called Bethany. He's at a dinner party at the house of a man called Simon the leper. And then, all of a sudden, a woman walks in and she's holding this beautiful alabaster jar. Now, what's in this jar is not your average perfume. It's pure nard, which was crazy expensive. How expensive? Well, it was worth about a full year's salary for an average worker. A whole year's wages in one jar. And what she does next is just stunning. She breaks the whole jar and pours all of it over Jesus's head. This is just extravagant, all in, holding nothing back devotion. Well, some of the people there, including his own disciples, are furious. They just see it as a complete waste. They're like, this could have been sold and the money given to the poor. But Jesus immediately jumps to her defense. He says she's done a beautiful thing for him. See, while they're all thinking about the practical, this woman got something they didn't. Jesus was about to die. She was anointing him for his burial. It was this incredible act of deep spiritual insight. And now, talk about whiplash. The mood just completely shifts. Mark puts this next scene right here for a reason. With the beauty of that selfless act still hanging in the air, one of Jesus' own, Judas Iscariot, slips away and goes straight to the chief priests. And this just lays the contrast bare for us. While that woman gave a gift worth a year's salary to honor Jesus, Judas agrees to betray him for just 30 pieces of silver. An extravagant gift versus a cheap betrayal. He tells them he'll hand Jesus over when there aren't any crowds around to cause a scene. Later on, they're all at the Passover meal, and Jesus just drops a bombshell. He says, "Truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me, one who's eating with me right now." And you can imagine the shock. The disciples are just heartbroken, and one by one they start asking, "Surely, you don't mean me?" But even in this moment, with betrayal literally at the table, Jesus does something massive. He takes the bread and wine from the Passover meal and gives them a totally new meaning. He says the bread is his body and the wine is his blood, the blood of a new covenant, which will be poured out for the forgiveness of sins. He's basically creating a new promise, a whole new way for people to connect with God that's sealed by his own sacrifice. After dinner, they head over to a place on the Mount of Olives called Gethsemane. Jesus takes his inner circle, Peter, James, and John, a little deeper into the garden with him to pray. And what we're about to see is one of the most raw, human moments in Jesus' entire life. He actually tells them how he's feeling. He says his soul is completely overwhelmed with sorrow, right to the point of death. This isn't some stoic hero just gliding towards his fate. He is in agony, deeply troubled by the physical and spiritual pain that he knows is coming. He falls on the ground and prays this incredibly raw, honest prayer. He starts with Abba, which is like saying daddy. It's super intimate. He asks if there's any other way out of this, if it's possible for this cup of suffering to be taken from him. But then he makes the turn, yet not what I will, but what you will. It's this moment of complete surrender to God's plan, even when it's painful. What's really amazing here is that Jesus' experience gives us a kind of playbook for our own hard times. First, he gets away to a private place to connect with God. Second, he is brutally, totally honest about his pain. He doesn't hide it. And third, in the end, he chooses to trust and submit. It's such a powerful guide for any of us when we're walking through our own Gethsemane. So 3 times Jesus goes to pray, and 3 times he comes back to find his best friends asleep. The last time, he says, "The hour has come." And right then, Judas shows up with a mob armed with swords and clubs. He identifies Jesus with a kiss, the absolute worst kind of betrayal. And as Jesus is arrested, all of his disciples just abandon him. They scatter and flee into the darkness. But let's zoom in on Peter for a minute, because just a few hours before this, Peter had made this big, passionate promise. He said, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." He was so sure of himself, so confident. But now, Peter has snuck into the high priest's courtyard, keeping his distance. He's trying to warm himself by a fire when a servant girl spots him. She says, "Hey, you were with that Nazarene, Jesus." And Peter's first reaction? A flat-out lie. "I don't know or even understand what you're talking about." So he tries to slip away, but the same girl points him out to some other people. This guy is one of them. The pressure is building, and for a second time, Peter denies it. Then, a little while later, the bystanders confront him directly. They say, "You've got to be one of them. We can tell by your accent." And this time, Peter just loses it. He starts calling down curses on himself and swears an oath, yelling, "I don't know this man you're talking about." He's doing everything he possibly can to distance himself from Jesus. And then it happens. Immediately after that third fierce denial, a rooster crows for the second time. And in that one instant, Peter remembers exactly what Jesus had told him. "Before the rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times." The full weight of what he just did comes crashing down on him, and he just breaks down and weeps. It's a moment of absolute soul-crushing failure. But here is the most important part of this whole story. That moment of deep shame was not the end for Peter. It really could have been, but it wasn't. It actually became his turning point. This is the same guy who, after Jesus' resurrection, would be the very first apostle to stand up and preach, leading thousands to faith. His greatest failure became the bedrock for his future. It's just this incredible reminder that our lowest moments don't have to define us. And that really brings us to the core question of Mark 14, doesn't it? This chapter basically holds up a mirror to us. We see the beautiful, costly devotion of an unnamed woman on one side, and on the other, we see the fearful denial and betrayal from Jesus' closest friends. We all face our own moments of testing. The question this chapter leaves us wrestling with is, which path will we choose? Extravagant devotion or fearful denial?